So, for just the fifth time in the last year and a half, the Detroit Lions have lost a football game that actually counts, and people are losing their minds at what happened on the field Sunday night in Kansas City with all kinds of shenanigans, missed calls, bad calls, calls that canceled out touchdowns, and a fight at the end of the game for good measure. Welcome into the Payne and Drain show. My name is Zach Payne. I'm one half of this podcast. I am joined, as always, by my co-host Alex Drain. And Alex, how are we doing after whatever that game was?
Well, I'm still feeling pretty calm as a whole, unlike a lot of people. I think that what really unfolded was this was a bad sports weekend for the state of Michigan, unless you're a Red Wings fan, I guess. But it's the first couple games of the season, so no one really weighs that in a similar sense. And so Friday night, you had one of the games of all time between the Tigers and the Seattle Mariners. It went 15 innings, did not end favorably. Then you had on Saturday either Michigan State watching their team get thoroughly deconstructed by what was supposed to be one of the worst teams in the Big Ten in UCLA, and now maybe in a have to fire the coach and pay a $30 million buyout situation. Or you're a Michigan fan and you got the marquee game of the week to watch your defense give up a 67% standard down success rate against USC en route to a pretty humiliating 31-13 defeat. And then you had the Sunday night game. So if you're a Michigan fan in particular, you had primetime games 3 straight days and you lost all of them. Now, at least for me, I came into the weekend thinking that the Lions game was the least likely of the three to win. Just personally, I thought that the Tiger game was a toss up. I thought the Michigan game was pretty much a toss up. I just didn't feel great about this game between the Chiefs and the Lions. Like I just kind of went into this game sort of feeling like the Chiefs are 2-3. They're going to want to play their best, try to get that big win. The Lions are down a secondary facing Mahomes. It just didn't feel like it was going to happen. And they battled for a while, but ultimately came up short. I'm not too disappointed, but it does raise the stakes for this coming game. I think we'll get to it at the end, but the difference between 5-2 and 4-3 at the bye week is a huge one. So that's what it does change, but ultimately not a huge surprise to me.
Yeah, and we talked about coming into this game that we just wanted one of the next two. So you lose this one, so now you have to bounce back on home field in Detroit on Monday night for a nice little primetime game against the Bucs that we'll talk about later. Talk about the Michigan State $30 million buyout. At least you're not Penn State. At least you're not dealing with a $50 million buyout, I guess. The college shenanigans that were happening this weekend were very funny, as well as the Tigers, whatever that was. As someone who's a very casual baseball fan that stayed up watching that game, I was just like, please do anything to save your season. And just it said like every inning that the Tigers survived, I was like, oh, there's another miracle that happened. I wonder if they'll do anything this time. And it just never did.
Yeah, the only thing that was good about the 15 inning game is that we live in the post pitch clock era because that game went till like 1:15 Eastern with the pitch clock. We would have been there at like 2:45 a.m. in the pre pitch clock era. So we
Yeah.
we dodged that bullet, but woof.
So to start off with this Lions and Chiefs recap, we're actually gonna say similar to last week how we dove into the injuries. First, we're gonna dive into an absence first that is going to be noteworthy going forward, and we're actually gonna start at the end of the game for that because after the game, there was a incident where Patrick Mahomes goes to shake Brian Branch's hand. Brian Branch says, "Nah." Juju Smith-Schuster walks up to Brian Branch, says something, talking smack of some kind, and Brian Branch does the football equivalent of a punch with the open palm smack. Helmets fly, bodies fly. Juju ends up bleeding on the ground after Branch is done with him, and the all hell breaks loose at the end of the game. As a result of that, Brian Branch has been suspended for the Monday night game against the Buccaneers. At the time of recording this, we do not know how the appeal process is going. He is appealing it. I don't think he's going to win that appeal based on the comments from the NFL regarding the suspension. So, I guess the main thing I want to talk about is Brian Branch over the past couple of years has had a couple of these emotional moments, emotional breakdowns, bad penalties. He's gotten ejected from a game. He's now got himself suspended. What is your take on just Brian Branch, the football player, and Brian Branch, the person on the field?
Well, I mean, I don't claim to know about Brian Branch as a person, but he's clearly a player where the emotions run hot, and that can be a type of person. But if there's a good thing to come out of this, I would think number one, it gives him 2 weeks to rest, which we'll get into this with the defense, but there's an argument that Kirby Joseph could use that too. But anyway, both guys were really pushing themselves to play in this game, and maybe it'll serve him well to have that option taken away from him. But on the other side of it, you hope that this is like the ultimate learning moment where things sort of have to change because it's not Fanta's perfect level. It's not like this guy is a liability to our team. Like we cannot put him out there because he's just incurring penalty after penalty. It's more occasional than that, but there is stuff that needs to be cleaned up and needs to be dealt with. And you hope that this is the situation where that lesson is finally learned and the message is sent. And I don't disagree with the suspension, honestly. I mean, it was pretty far outside the bounds of what is reasonable, especially because the game was over. There was time on the clock, but the teams were coming together to shake hands, and there's just not a lot of argument. And you have to think that the history of discipline with Branch played a role in this. It'd be a little bit different if he had a very clean record, but there's been too many of these things, and hopefully this is the one that can kind of put an end to it because it was just I know that Juju Smith-Schuster had a block in the back is what it seems like on a previous play in a few minutes prior. Okay. Um, no one is really, and certainly in the reaction after the game, no one was particularly like, oh man, we feel so bad for Juju. Like he's generally a disliked player and a player a lot of people dunk on, but you still have to hold it within the bounds, and this was outside the bounds, and so it's dealt with in the way that was probably the only way you could deal with it, and now uh, we just hope that it doesn't happen again.
Yeah, and there's a lot of people that are bending over backwards to try to excuse what Branch did. Branch himself admitted what he did was childish and wrong. Dan Campbell, after the game, said, "We do not do that here." And he had, like, I said on my video that I was like, Branch should just have to watch Dan Campbell apologize on his behalf and be like the disappointed parent in the room and just watch that all week. And that should, the guilt and shame that goes with that should be enough for him. I don't, he just sees the red mist a little bit. And it's gonna be a thing where players try to egg him on because now they know, like, hey, this guy's very good, but he's also very hot-headed. And if we can get under his skin, there's a chance that he's gonna do something stupid. Teams are going to try to do that to him, and he's going to have to stay composed. He's going to have to stay level-headed because he does play with a fire on the field that can get him into trouble sometimes. He's also why he has so many highlights, so many big hits, so many big tackles because he's a heat-seeking missile out there. He just has to make sure that he's aimed at the right target and only active in between the whistles. There was the whole I know people were dunking on the Mahomes, like we're here to play in between the whistles. They could do whatever they want. Like that was the most ironic comment that a Chiefs player could have made, especially Mahomes with all the smack he talks between plays and all the taunting that he does. And we talked, I don't know if we talked on this show, but it's been a talking point how Mahomes takes advantage of the quarterback protection rules at the sideline to get cheap shots on defenders as he's running out of bounds too. But so that like it is a little talking out of both sides of your mouth from the Chiefs themselves, but at the end of the day, like I Branch deserves this. And if he somehow wins this appeal, I'll be shocked. I don't think we're going to see him till Minnesota. I think there's a very good chance that like, again, we'll talk about it in a second, but Thomas Harper might be your starting safety on Monday night. So that's the shenanigans that happened. We also got some injury updates from Dan Campbell, Avonte Maddox, and Terrion Arnold. Not expected to play this week against the Buccaneers. We know that Terrion is probably he's not on injured reserve, so he'll probably be fine after the bye. Maddox, same thing. We got an update that Marcus Davenport is not ready to return from IR. We still have no idea what's going on with Josh Pascal and his stuff. Ali McNeil trending towards playing against the Bucs. He will not play a full allotment of snaps. He would be on a snap count, but he is progressing at a rate that the Lions are content with. So he'll probably play 15 to 20 snaps against the Bucs. So that'd be nice. But the secondary is still pretty dead. So that's going to be a big challenge against a Bucs team that should get Mike Evans back.
Well, thankfully the Bucks do have still quite a few injuries in that regard, so it's a little bit of one hand tied behind the back versus one hand tied behind the back.
It's going to be an ugly game, as we'll talk about later. So, starting out with this game against the Chiefs, with the offensive side of the ball, the Lions did okay. They were moving the ball all right. The offensive line with Dan Skipper in at left tackle did a pretty good job of protecting Goff until the game script kind of let the Chiefs pin their ears back on every single down. They were pushing things forward at the line of scrimmage. Obviously, Chris Jones got the better of the interior every now and again, but that's going to happen against a good player. But the problem came on those high leverage downs, those third and mediums, third and longs, the fourth downs, where the Lions were unable to rise to the occasion. What was going wrong for the Lions in those moments? I believe they finished 5 of 11 on third down and 0 for 2 on fourth. Just what was going wrong there?
Well, the problem on fourth down was on one occasion you had a drop by Amon-Ra St. Brown, which wasn't the greatest throw in the world, wasn't the easiest catch in the world, but he makes those catches all the
Yeah,
time.
it'll never happen
So,
again.
yeah, and he obviously will blame himself for that. They have a touchdown that they take off the board, which is its own talking point with that whole situation. But at the end of the day, it appears that that was a correctly uh, litigated penalty, even if the delay, whatever. So that's a mistake that took a touchdown off the board. You end up kicking a field goal. And then finally, you had the 4th and 1 late in the game, which I thought that was just such a stupid play because it was 2:03 remaining in the fourth quarter. You're at 4th and 1. Run the ball. Run the ball. There's a 2-minute warning right there. That next play is going to bleed into the 2-minute warning. Like, spread it out. You're right. Go flex your tight end out, 3 wide receivers, lighten the box, just run, get 1 yard, reset the change, move on with your drive. Like, that was just a dumb play call. I don't know why they
Well,
needed to throw there.
throw deep at that. Like throw why not why where's the 1 yard hitch route to Laporta? Where's the short concepts? Where's the
Yeah,
spacing concepts? Why is it all 10 to 15 yards down the field?
yeah. So that was weird play calling. So you have a play calling incident, you have a drop, and you have a penalty that are really the big plays there on the fourth downs. There's also a 3rd and long screen again.
Your favorite.
We just keep talking about it each week, and I'm until it stops, we will continue to discuss it. That killed another drive, and that drive was frustrating because they got to 2nd and 8. They threw a swing pass to Gibbs, got TFL'd. Then they went to a 3rd and 11 screen, got very little. You get almost no blocking on either play from the guys that are supposed to be blocking the wide receivers and the tight ends. Thought this was a pretty poor game from Wright and Ross Dwelly. That's his name. I think we got that one
Yep.
right now on the record. He's been showing up more and more each week and not playing very well. So that stuff was frustrating, but at the same time, I wasn't mad with this offensive performance. Really, I mean, like they lacked that ability to finish and to score more points than or convert on the yards they gained. But at the end of the day, you look, they didn't run that many plays because they were shortening the game intentionally. That first drive, they take 9.5 minutes, something like that. This was not a game with a lot of possessions. Both teams Lions run 53 plays, Chiefs run 62 plays. This was a short game, and on those 53 plays, they gained 297 yards, which is 5.6 yards per play. Don't have a major issue with that. And as you mentioned, the biggest story was when the game script changed. When they couldn't run the ball because of timing constraints, then the Chiefs were able to take advantage of that pass rush. But before that, they ran the ball pretty well. They moved it pretty well. They just screwed up a few times in some high leverage moments for varying reasons, and that kind of was their undoing in the end.
I do want to take a moment to talk about the backup tight ends because we talked in training camp about how one of the things Sam Laporta was working on was his blocking. And Sam Laporta he's been a very good blocker this year. I've been very impressed with Laporta as a blocking tight end. I did not expect Laporta to be far and away the best blocking tight end because Brock Wright has been struggling for a majority of the season now. And I'm starting to get worried that something is wrong with him because he has regressed in this area. That is his specialty. He is a blocking tight end first and foremost. And the one, like the screen out to Gibbs, I understand when he's put in a bad position. When Johnny Morton is like, go block Trey Hendrickson. Okay, I will forgive you. You should not be tasked with doing that. When you're running a screen and you're tasked with blocking a linebacker, you cannot be getting completely run over and give up the tackle for loss with like one on one. You can't be losing one on ones like that against players that you should be able to at least slow down a little bit. And Ross Dwelly, he's a guy. Like he's the wasn't supposed to really be here, but he is now, and he's kind of just the third blocking tight end. I I just like I don't know what's going on with Brock Wright. I don't know what the solution is, like aside from play better. But I think the Lions might need to start consider like first of all, they've been calling a lot of 12 personnel, a lot of two tight end sets where they will line up both tight ends on the same side and run duo to that side. And I think they might have to scale back the amount of times they're using this personnel grouping because Wright just has not been it.
No, it's not been a good go of things for the backup tight ends, and that does hurt their screen game. It hurts their rushing game, so that's something they got to look at. Other things on offense. I mean, I thought Goff was pretty darn good in this game. I don't have a lot of Goff related issues as a whole. He had a weird decision on that 2 minute drill they were trying to do, which was really like a 40-second drill at the end of the first half. He throws a route to Amon-Ra in like the middle of the field for 4 yards where he gets tackled and the clock keeps running. That was a strange decision. Outside of that, though, I didn't have a major issue. He had to dink and dunk it a little bit more than maybe you'd like, but 23 of 29 for 203, 2 touchdowns. I don't remember any interceptable passes or anything. That totally fine from me. The touchdown he throws to JMO was
A laser.
yeah. And one of his great anticipatory throws. We talk about that as his best thing. Like he throws that ball while JMO is behind the linebacker on the other side and just fits it right in there. So fine day from him. Eventually he got a little bit when the protection broke down, but he also had a 3rd and 4 scramble for a first down. And it wasn't
Vanilla
like one of
Vic.
those it wasn't one of those where it's like you have all day to throw and there is no one within 25 yards and we're screaming at the TV, just run it, just run it. Like that one, he kind of wiggled out of the pocket. He got a block from, I think it was Gibbs, and he got the first down and fell forward. Like that was one of his best scrambles that we've seen of him in Detroit. So credit to him there. I don't have a major issue with him in this game.
Yeah, and credit on that play too. Like for Dan Skipper, if you're gonna get beat, make sure you get beat wide so that Goff can step up, and that's exactly what happened. Yeah, Goff was perfectly fine. He also had a nice. I'll give him partial credit for a tight window throw, and I'll give a lot of credit to Sam Laporta on that touchdown catch with one hand. Like Goff did put it in a good area where only Laporta could get it with the defender draped all over him. And it was a great catch by Laporta. Speaking of which, Laporta had a nice game, another touchdown for him, obviously. JMO, 6 for 66 and a score. That's a much better game. It was very encouraging to see him worked in the intermediate parts of the field. We saw him on a drag route as well early in the game. They were doing more things to get him involved, as opposed to just sending him deep every play. And if it's there, it's there. I like to see the way that they were incorporating him. Amon-Ra, 9 catches is good. 45 yards is way too little on that many catches, but that's an anomaly. We know Amon-Ra is going to be just fine. The only other thing I'll flag is the split between Gibbs and Montgomery in this game. Way too, at least touch wise, was way too slanted in Gibbs's favor. Montgomery only has 4 rushes for 24 in this game. Gibbs was 17 for 65, I believe. Need that balance to be a little bit more aligned.
Yeah, and Montgomery ran it really well when he was in. They had a couple, I think it was the second touchdown drive. They ran two versions of running back slip screens to Montgomery, and both were really effective. One of the best plays in football. I'm always an advocate for a slip screen. Keep those in the rotation.
Not on
As you
third down,
mentioned,
though.
As you mentioned, nice to see JMO involved early on, especially in this game. That was a talking point coming into the week. Just got to get him in the mix, got to get him in the mix. They did, so that was nice to see. Laporta, I think people have forgotten or just haven't fully internalized how good he is at contested catches. Like the Lions haven't given him a ton of opportunities, but the one that came to mind for me when he caught that was the touchdown he had in the Commanders game, which I feel like is
Yep.
one of those catches that has been lost to history a little bit because we've all
Yeah, like big plays in playoff losses are usually forgotten. Like the what was the Super Bowl between the Cardinals and Steelers where Larry Fitzgerald has that huge touchdown with like 2 minutes to go, but then the Steelers answer, so no one remembers it.
I thought you were going to talk about the Julio Jones catch in the Falcons Patriots Super Bowl.
Yeah, there's that
That's
one too. Like we could name 1,000 of these kind of plays, right? So like the JMO end around from that Commanders game, the Laporta one hand catch, gonna be lost to history because all people are gonna remember from JMO in that game is that he threw an interception.
Yeah, and I think as Lions fans, especially, a lot of us have wiped our memory of the Commanders game, and so things like the Laporta catch in that one have been forgotten. But that was a great play, the one-handed catch. This one not quite as good, but still really nice. Great toe tap. So there were points earlier in the year we were talking about why isn't Laporta more involved? Blah 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 blah. He's had a couple now really nice weeks in a row between Cincinnati and KC. The 55 yards in this one, 92 the previous week, touchdowns in both. He's at 324 yards now through 6 games. So if you do
That'll
the
do.
math, that's probably like what, a 850, 900 yard season, roughly across
Yep.
17 games. So that's not bad at all. And again, there's only so many catches that can go around. So no real issues there from me. On offensive line, I thought their run blocking was good.
Yep.
I mean, there were some issues here and there, but like even the stuff they have a that stuff or maybe it's a TFL right at the line where the OL paves up front, but just no one can get up to Nick Bolton and he just sprints right through and stuffs that. Like the actual battles in the trenches on the ground, I thought were really good, which isn't really surprising at this point because Skipper, as we know, much stronger on the ground than in pass protection in his career. That's why he was a good sixth OL. Mahogany, I think, is probably more balanced. I think he's not a bad pass protector, or at least relative to the others. But Ratledge, absolutely a better run blocker. He's a good run blocker at this point. Like
Very good. Yeah.
starting to get to that range. Pass blocking still is a major work in progress for him. So you've got a line, and even Sewell, who is fine as a pass protector, is obviously a more accomplished run blocker. That is the name of his
Yeah.
game. So
I
you've
mean,
got
he's the best run blocker in the league,
right.
so it's
So
kind of hard
yeah,
to
and
match
and
that.
run block, you rarely ever see him get whipped by an edge for like a stuff on a run block, but he does give up some pressures from time to time. So
Yeah.
you've got a line that, as a whole, is pretty clearly a stronger run blocking line than pass protecting. But all that said, it was good to see the consistency. I mean, Gibbs ends up at 3.8 yards per carry, but during the meat of the game, when they were moving the ball well, they were running it pretty consistently for
Mhm.
nice chunks. I mean, I would imagine a little bit of that is the goal line stuff, where that 1 yard
Yeah.
run, 2 yard run that bogs that average down. But driving the length of the field, they were pretty consistently grinding 5, 6 yard chunks. So that was very positive.
Yeah, the one thing I will say is Gibbs, he has 17 carries in this game, 21 between the two running backs. Like 8 of those were on the first drive of the game that took 9.5 off the clock. So the Lions came out with a purpose to just delete more than half the first quarter, and Gibbs was picking up 4, 3, 4, 5, 6 yards of carry all the way down the field until they got in the red zone. It was fine. I'm still the Lions are getting a little predictable with some of their like you mentioned the Bolton TFL. That happens because the Lions are running duo against an 8-man box. Like you're just vacating the middle of the field and saying, "Hey Gibbs, make this guy miss as you get the football." That's not going to work. And I would like to see the Lions get Gibbs involved on more outside zone carries still because I think for as he's perfectly fine running up the middle, but he's at his best when he's in space, and I don't think the Lions have done enough to get him in space. So there's still another gear for this run game to hit. And again, ideally get Montgomery a few more touches. That split should probably be 15 to 10 in favor of Gibbs in most cases. So hopefully they can run the ball better against the Buccaneers, but running up the middle is obviously going to be a challenge when you have Vita Vea on the other side, and we'll talk about that later. Aside from that, are we good on the off? Do you want to talk about the Goff, the receiving TD fiasco now or later?
I figured we could do that in ref talk.
Okay.
Um, because it's really one of the only things we have to talk about in this game. There
Yep.
weren't a ton of penalties, very few on the opposition, but
That's another thing that a lot of Lions fans have been upset about. So moving on to the defense, I've got like I could probably count on one hand the amount of plays that I liked. There was a strip sack from Hutchinson who continues to force fumbles at a ridiculous rate. Al-Qadim Muhammad got a sack. Thomas Harper had a nice PBU, and Alex Anzalone had a nice TFL. That's about it. This defense could not stop much in this game. I I don't want to attribute it all to just the corners were hurt because the Lions were playing a lot of zone. It seems like there was a lot of difficulties covering the middle of the field where a Chiefs player would end up wide open after Mahomes broke out of the pocket.
yeah, it's not entirely explained by the secondary problems, although those are definitely a part of it. Um, did you mention the Hutch TF the Hutch strip sack
Yeah.
in your list of plays? Okay, I didn't hear that one. Yeah, it wasn't a great showing as a whole. I don't have like one singular thing that was a problem. The biggest one that honestly stuck out when I was reviewing the tape again, they really struggled with the screens in this game. The Chiefs ran quite a few of those, just like the ball pursuit and then just ability to make a tackle were not great in that phase of the game. I mean, you think about the sequence where you have the Hutch the Hutch strip sack, you have that gets them to 3rd and 16-ish. Then they run a screen in which they get almost all of it back, or they get all of it back plus the yardage they needed to get the first down. Almost, they get like 15 on 3rd and 16, which then allows them to go on 4th and 1, and that's where Harper makes the play. So credit to him there, but that was flirting with disaster. Like on that kind of screen, they're just trying to get yardage to set up a field goal and or a closer field goal and like maybe get in 4th down going forward range. And then by giving that up, you will walk them right into allowing them to go on 4th down. And though they stopped that one, we saw in this game that when an offense as good as the Chiefs can be when they're firing on all cylinders with Mahomes as the quarterback, and then they decide to go for it on 4th down often, it's really tough to keep points off the board and to stop them from scoring touchdowns. And they score a touchdown on a 4th down early in the game. I think that was the first drive that they had. So you just can't let them get into those situations where they're going to go for it on 4th down because that's just giving them extra chances, and you can't give extra chances to these teams. And screen was to blame there, but you had other screens that just went for like 7, 8 yard chunks and just made it really easy on Casey. And then you have that with the Kelsey issues covering him. Campbell came out really negatively in PFF on the coverage grades. I would imagine that he was probably the most to blame for that, but it just felt like Kelsey was always open. And then again, you have those issues with screens, and that was just a lot of free yardage. Like they didn't make the Chiefs really get a bunch of huge explosives or do anything super fancy when there was just too much easy stuff being left for the Chiefs to take advantage of.
And I want to throw into those easy plays the instant throws off the line where Mahomes is throwing it in under half a second right away to a guy off the line who's the Lions are just playing too soft, too far off, and there's an easy 6, 7, 8 yards there. It just seems like the Lions didn't know how to handle some of these. Like the Chiefs were running a lot of these hooks like at about a 15-yard depth that would just sit in behind the linebackers so that when Mahomes broke out of contain, he was able to just find a guy wide open. And the amount of times that the Chiefs had a guy that wasn't like there was no one covering him within 5 yards was alarming in this game. There was one in the end zone to Hollywood Brown where he's left all alone inexplicably. There was the one where Hutchinson couldn't get Mahomes on the ground and he finds
Yep.
Hollywood Brown
Yep.
for a 15, 20-yard gain. There was the one play where Brian Branch, unable to bring down Xavier Worthy, he's able to get extra yards after the catch. I was more alarmed at the missed tackles, but yeah, it's just they didn't make the Chiefs work hard enough for the yardage that they got. And the Chiefs, credit to them, they played a very clean game and they just took what the defense gave them, and they gave them way too much in this one.
Yeah, I mean the tackling on that first drive in particular was really bad. There were a couple plays back to back where you had just failures to wrap guys up or guys just with reckless abandon, flying in and then whiffing on the play altogether, or a hit and not knocking him to the ground. I mean, it's just over and over again. Way too many issues in the tackling phase there. I don't know. It felt like they were playing in the coverages to try and force field goals, right? That they
Yep.
were going to let sort of nothing deep. We're playing off underneath. We're playing a lot of soft zones. We're letting them drive the length of the field, and then we'll try to slam the door in the red zone, which is something that, to the Lions' credit, they've generally been pretty decent at doing. In this era, that's part of their whole thing. They try to force field goals. They try to get turnovers, but they didn't get any turnovers in this game. They didn't come all that close outside of the strip sack, and they only forced one field goal. And part of that was being unable to get off the field on the fourth down that I mentioned that led to a touchdown. You also have a 3rd and 10 where Rocky Sin gets called for a penalty. That's a big swing moment in this game. Like it felt like a lot of the leverage snaps went against them. They couldn't keep the Chiefs out of the end zone once it got to the red zone, and they didn't on offense do a good enough job finishing off this game. And so it's kind of why you look at the box score and you see yards per play was very even. If you deduct those kneel downs, you get the Chiefs at about 6.0. Lions, as we said, were at 5.6. The Chiefs had an edge, but I think the game was probably closer than it indicated on the scoreboard. It's just a lot of the biggest moments definitely were tilted towards KC. Like they rose to the occasion when it mattered in the highest leverage moments.
Yeah, and I will say for the Lions defense, like from a schematic standpoint, the Lions are built to be a very aggressive unit. As you said, they want to force turnovers at pretty much any cost. And in this game, they were forced to play a much more passive shell, and they just aren't equipped to do that at the same level that other teams around the league are, because that's not something that they want to be doing. So it felt very uncomfortable for them, and it looked very uncomfortable watching it from like live at home. And so that's not something that the Lions are going to do often. They definitely are going to be stuck playing a little bit more zone for the next little bit until Reed and Arnold come back because of the injuries at corner. It's You're just gonna have to hope that, well, normally in this situation, it'd be like, okay, well, the corners are out, but hopefully the safeties can make plays. But Brian Branch, as we said, is out for this Monday game with a suspension, and Kirby Joseph. It is hard to watch this guy play football right now, not because he's not playing well. He didn't have his best game, but he looks so much pain every time he takes a step. At one point he left this game with the re-aggravation of the knee injury, and he was moving so gingerly on the sideline. I'm like, oh, we're not going to see Kirby for 2 months. And then he's back like 5 minutes later, still gutting it out, trying to do his best. Dan Campbell described this as a similar situation to Taylor Decker, where they're just monitoring it. It's not necessarily getting better, but he could play through it. It feels like he needs a couple of weeks off here as well.
Yeah, it every week he ends up on the turf at some point. And in most cases, it's not really something that happens to aggravate it that it looks like. I mean, this week, same story. Like he doesn't even get contacted.
No.
He just is like, oh, we're playing, then the play ends, then he just sort of sits down, and then the trainers have to come out. And it feels like the way he's been dealing with his injury, that he's approaching it how you would approach an injury in the Stanley Cup playoffs, where right, it's just like, oh,
Yeah.
I'll soldier through it. These are the biggest games. You're not keeping me off the ice, and it's like this isn't the playoffs. This is the middle of the season. Lions are a good enough team that they should feel reasonably comfortable about their ability to make the playoffs if you have Kirby Joseph sit a little bit. And I just don't think I'm not a doctor, but it doesn't feel like he probably should be pushing himself as much as he is right now. It just doesn't feel like these games are important enough that the potential risks you're incurring are sort of worth it.
Well, and again, like you said, it's like how hockey players in the Stanley Cup playoffs play through injuries. Like we've seen, and like we've seen hockey players do really stupid things. Like they'll play on torn ACLs, they'll play with
Yep.
one lung and no ribs and whatever. If this were the playoffs and he was gutting through it, I'd be like, wow, very admirable. It's the playoffs. Like look at the commitment to win. It's week 6, dude. You're allowed to just take a couple of weeks. The Lions are gonna be fine. We have the bye week coming up, so he'll get a week off anyways. But it's the same with Decker. I don't think Decker's going to play against the Bucs, and then the plan will be coming out of the bye that hopefully this won't be an issue anymore. With Kirby, I don't care if you miss Minnesota after the bye. I don't care if you miss a game after that. Sit down until you are healthy so that this isn't a problem. Because the absolute worst thing that could happen is he keeps gutting it out, and then one day something in that knee buckles, and suddenly we have a much more serious injury on our hands. Like that's the situation you have to avoid.
Yeah, it's a real concern. It based on his level of play too, it didn't feel like he should have played. Not just with the injury, but he's not anywhere near 100%. And maybe there's a part of you that's like, please play for the Bucs because Branch is now suspended, right? That's kind of like the tough thing you're weighing there. But I do think if you got Branch back, you could afford Joseph to sit because I am a big Harper fan. We talked about this when they picked him up. I was really excited about that. He was much better than the average guy you pick up off waivers at the end of training camp. He was a guy who played a lot last year for the Raiders, and maybe he needed some time to learn the defense or whatever. But he played 10 snaps, I think was the number I saw at PFF in this game. He
Pretty
played
much
well.
when he pretty much played when Kirby came out for 10 snaps.
Right. And he has the big PBU that ends that drive, but he's got enough of a track record that I think I would be okay if Harper plays. He'll have to play certainly in some capacity this upcoming week, but the Lions are. We went through camp feeling really worried about the safety depth, and now we're kind of in the situation where we were dreading at the start of like in July. It was kind of like, who is the third safety? Is it Morris Norris? What's going on here? And at least with Harper now, I feel a little more okay about the situation that would arise now. And if he has to play for Branch one week, then Kirby another week. The playoffs are all that matters. Just get guys ready.
You can survive with Thomas Harper out there. Now, what might be the bigger problem is between Joseph and Branch and Avonte Maddox, those are the Lions' top three preferred safeties, who are
Right.
all potentially out for this game against the Bucs. So it's Thomas Harper and his band of merry men. Rock Ya-Sin is going to play some corner, some safety in this one. Eric Hallett was getting snaps in this Chiefs game. I mean, they at one point asked him to play at least one man cover rep against Travis Kelce, and I never want to see him play man coverage again at the NFL level. But I there's going to be a band-aid solution this week. It's going to be rough. The secondary is very broken right now, but the bye week is there, and then hopefully you can get a little bit of reinforcements. You just have to survive one more week with this, and then hopefully it'll be okay.
Yeah, it kind of feels like the Lions are coming up on the NFL equivalent of just like a Friday after a long week, right? Where like you wake up and it's just like, well, just power through it, and then you get to the weekend, and then you get to rest, and that's kind of what the Bucs game feels like. It's a weird thing where the Lions aren't really that injured at the moment, like just across the full team. The offense is basically intact except for Decker, and he's not out for the year or anything. And the defensive front has been pretty healthy. Like they haven't had a lot of issues at linebacker this year so far, unlike last season. And the defensive line, they're still waiting on McNeil, but that's an injury that happened last season. And then I guess Pascal, but that was kind of before anything has started. Like since week one, they've been pretty good as a whole. Davenport, everyone knew that when it was going to happen.
Yeah,
That's
that
how
doesn't
it's
count. That doesn't count.
that's factored in. So basically, across all the positional groups, you're really just looking at Taylor Decker. That was like the one that sort of popped up during weeks 1 through 7, or what 1 through 6, yeah, 6 so far. But then everything in the secondary, like just everyone in the secondary has been afflicted in some way. So that can hurt your team more than it would be if they're spread out because it gives you
Yeah.
that big vulnerability. It's testing the Lions' depth, but thankfully they're strong enough at a lot of other places on the team that they can kind of survive it for the most part. I do also want to just say the Chiefs are still the Chiefs.
Yep.
Mahomes made some great plays. Like you can't say it's all on the Lions. You got to tip your cap on some of these plays. And finally, Muhammad got another sack in this game. Just to
Yep.
get that out there, right at the end. That was the one that forced the field
Yeah.
goal, I think, right, to make it
It's kind of
30-17.
like a nice little like consolation. Ah, there you go. You made a play. I will say though, between Hutch and Muhammad, those two combined have 10.5 sacks right now. It's pretty good production.
And I can guarantee they're going to have more sacks the rest of this season than Zadarius Smith will. So,
Yeah, who retired? What happened in Philadelphia? Like this guy took one look at AJ Brown and Jalen Hurts and was like, "Nah, I'm out." I don't know what happened there, but For those of you who were like, "Hey, the Lions need to sign Zadarius Smith," how are we feeling now, 6 weeks in?
Well, the weirdest thing is he played well, I guess, for Philly. Like all
They're
the Eagles
melting
fans,
down.
all the Eagles fans were like, he was our best pass rusher. Like blah blah blah. He was leading in whatever, pass rush grade or something like that, and now he's just gone. So don't know what's happening there. That's strange.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll hear something at some point regarding that. I don't know. It feels like there's some drama that probably went on behind the scenes, or maybe he just like woke up one day and was like, my body can't do this anymore, which is also totally possible. Um, Aside from that, I don't know if we have too much else to say about this game. I do want to mention, we'll get into game theory and ref talk in a second. I do want to mention injury wise too. How is Khalif Raymond playing football right now? I don't know how on earth that dude he missed 0 games. He obviously missed the game that he got injured in, missed 0 games with that scary looking spine injury. That dude must be made out of rubber.
He didn't have a lot to do in this game because Lions didn't force many punts, just the one. It is remarkable though that he is playing. That is quite something.
We also should, as we get into like special teams and game theory and all that, to start this game, Craig Reynolds was returning kicks, and then the Lions at some point got frustrated with that because they kept getting returns to exactly the 29 or 24, whatever. And Dominic Lovett started getting some action on kick returns. It seems like the Lions are starting to get a little frustrated with their return game, and we saw that with Sailors had some nice work against Cincinnati, but it seems like the Lions are looking for more. Their special teams was fine. The Chiefs were pretty routinely getting out to the 31 exactly. The special teams, like the kickoff coverage for both sides, was remarkably consistent in this one. So I think Dave Phipp is just like, we were fine. We can do better. After how good they've been the last couple of weeks, they can do a little bit better in that department.
That's part of what we've been saying, where teams have been cracking the code a little bit in terms of where to place the kickoffs and how to do that under the new rules. So I think we are starting to just see more consistency around the league, although special teams units remain quite a fiasco for a lot of teams around the league. Certainly last night, that was on display at a couple of the games.
And why are field goal blocks up so much this year? I don't understand what these kickers, why the kicker, if they're kicking it lower, like the lower trajectory, or what is happening. But there's been an abnormal amount of blocks this year. Anyways, that's a whole can of worms there. Ref talk. Let's get into ref talk. What do you got?
Not a lot. I didn't think that the Lions had many penalties that I was really. I mean, there weren't a lot of penalties, period. There were only a couple on the Lions. Most were very much deserved. The only one that stands out really is the Goff one, which my understanding is that that's a rule related to him being under center versus the shotgun.
Yes. So for those of you who need a quick refresher, Lions fourth and goal from the half-yard line. Jared Goff walks up towards Graham Glasgow, taps him, and then sprints out wide. While he's in motion, they snap it to David Montgomery, who throws it out to Goff, who bobbles the ball into Trent McDuffie. But because Amon-Ra kept blocking him into the end zone, Goff was able to make the catch, get into the end zone. Like, woohoo, we're happy. And then the ruling was now it is important to note 1 minute and 17 seconds passed before a flag was thrown after that touchdown. The Lions were lined up for the extra point, like they were getting ready to kick whatever. And then they are like, hold on, after conversation, illegal motion on the offense. And the ruling is if a quarterback is in shotgun and he motions out, he's allowed to be in motion at the snap. However, the way they determine it is when a quarterback goes under center, they are establishing themselves as the quarterback. Whereas if they start in shotgun, technically you could snap it to a couple of guys, whatever. Goff never directly gets under center, technically, but because he walks up and taps Glasgow, they're marking that as under center. And for some reason, when you're under center, the rule is different for a quarterback in motion. So after a very lengthy discussion, it's called back. It is technically the right call, but first of all, people weren't even as mad at the call as they were how late it came in. So we have a couple parts to break down. First of all, did you know this was a rule?
No, I mean, well,
Learn something new every week.
the thing I'm probably the fuzziest on, honestly, with the rule book is formation rules. Like, I just don't know those really well off the top of my head. So I didn't understand this from the start. In the immediate aftermath, people were like, "Oh, well, he didn't get set before the snap, and you have to be set before the snap." I'm like, "No, you don't. Like, you can't have multiple people in motion. And that's, we're not Canadian football, but you can have one person in motion. That happens a lot. So it was just one of those, seems to be one of those weird rules related to this specific formation. I don't know those, but people on staff are paid to know them. And at the end of the day, seems like it was the correct call. It's just people seem to be mad at how it happened. And
Yes.
I don't know. At the end of the day, the right call is what I care about the most. And if the right call was made, then that's on the Lions for not being well drilled enough.
So there's so when it comes to like the how late the flight came in, there's a couple things at play. Does it like for some people, the idea that New York would have called in to be like, "Hey, this was a penalty that you missed," was a problem for them, and they want refs to be able to miss calls. Obviously, it's because the Lions scored a touchdown, and that's the only reason people want that play to be able to stand and refs to be able to make mistakes. Now, we also got conflicting reports over whether New York was even involved. Dan Campbell said that New York was involved. The pool report said that they weren't. So that's also a different fiasco. But does that impact your perception of what happened, whether or not it was a call from upstairs or not?
I think that New York was involved personally. That's my guess. It doesn't really matter to me if they were. Again, we can argue all you want about whether whether there's like a whether there's a statute of limitations on the penalty, right? Like you get 30 seconds, and then if you don't throw the flag, you can't throw any more flags. I don't know. I just want the call to be correct. I don't like that it took that long. I don't sort of like how it happened, but it's not the first time I've seen something like that. Whether it's to me, whether it's from New York or whether it's we peeked at the Jumbotron to watch the replay and then made the call, that doesn't make a big distinction to me. And I've certainly seen the latter before. There's been a few of those cases. I can't remember a specific one, but like a play where you have like an obvious pass interference that the referee closest to him missed. Sometimes you'll see them all huddle together and then conveniently, after a couple replays have been shown on the screen, they suddenly drop the flag after a lengthy discussion. That happens occasionally. And in most cases, it's like, man, if we don't get this right, we're going to be in big trouble. Like, we have to get this one right. And this person clearly blew it. So it wasn't outside the realm of anything I had seen before. So at the end of the day, right call.
Yep. And the other thing that people were mad about was the fact that the Chiefs had zero accepted penalties against them, only one called on them, which was an egregious offsides in with about 2:30 to go in this one. And people were online clipping all the missed holding calls on Travis Kelce and the center and the illegal block in the back that should have been called on Juju and all this stuff. And I this was the stuff that irritated me a little bit because it's like, guys, is this your first day watching football? We know the referees are bad. It happens. Missed calls happen. Bad calls happen. I don't know what to tell you. Like, it's gonna happen every week. The Lions have benefited from mistakes before. Like we talked about the mistake. Like, yes, they got to the right call at the end of the day. It is the exact same as when the Lions were beneficiaries of the Isaac Tesla at the end of the half against the Bears in week 2, where it's like, oh, well, he was ruled out of bounds, but not out of bounds. And that led to a fiasco that allowed the Lions to score a touchdown. Mistakes happen. Referees are human. Unless you want the robot refs, the robot umps like in baseball, like deal with it.
Yeah, I don't want the NFL to be the NHL where each team is allotted 7 flags that we are then, you can use you
Yeah,
can
if you're
use your
offside by
flags.
by this, like a tiny, tiny bit.
No, like yeah, it's like each in this game in refereeing, I will be assigning 7 flags to each team, and here's your flags. Please use them when you see fit. Now, like it's we don't need this to be even just for the sake of being even, and the way they do it in the NHL, where if one team gets 3 penalties in a row, the next one is coming to the other team, and it's probably going to be something really soft because they're looking to give out a power play. We don't need that, and sometimes that means one team is going to have a lot of penalties, the other team won't. And it's not like the Lions had a lot of penalties, as we talked about. There really just weren't that many in this game. I didn't come away feeling like, man, they've just missed so many calls on the Chiefs. It was just kind of like, I don't know, didn't really see a ton in this game. Yes, you can get out and Zapruder the tape to find 15 holding calls that weren't called. That's That's every game.
And you
So
could find 15 on the Lions too.
sure. So I don't really care about that. At the end of the day, the Chiefs were the better team in this game. They deserve to win. That's all I really have to say about the refereeing.
Yeah. And aside from that, is there anything else you want to mention from this game?
Not really. I mean, I think we all agree on the fourth down stuff. I mean, there's one in the fourth quarter they had to go for. There's one, the 4th and 2 with the Amon-Ra drop plus 44-yard line. We all know
Yeah.
that. Like, that's an obvious go for it. 4th and goal at the 1, obvious go for it. 4th and goal at the 6 after the penalty. I was fine kicking. That's the only one that I
Yeah,
think could be up for
that's
debate.
kick. Yeah. When it comes to fourth and goals in neutral game scripts, it's got to be like 3 yards or closer for me to be comfortable with it, especially in a tie game. Like start the game, just get points.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. The other thing I had to say about this, I liked the way that they approached this game from a game theory standpoint in terms of shortening the game. I think that was the right approach. They were playing a team that at full strength is probably pretty similar to them in caliber. Maybe you could say the Lions are better, but with the Lions' injuries and the fact that Chiefs have the healthiest team in football history at the moment, you're probably the worst team. You're on the road. You're the underdog. The underdog should want to shorten the game. I think they had that all correct. Just, another classic example of sort of knowing what kind of game they're in and playing to it. So I liked that.
Yeah. And now the Lions are 4-2. And whenever the Lions lose, because of how infrequent it's become over the recent years, the sky is falling all of a sudden. And people are like, oh no, the Lions lost again, whatever. To remind people that good teams lose, I just would like to bring up a few of the games that happened this weekend. First of all, the Philadelphia Eagles lost by 3 scores to the New York Giants. Wow, a good team lost by 3 scores. By the way, Cam Scatterbo, Jackson Dart, that looks like a beginning of a fun era of football in New York for the first time in a long time. The so Zadar maybe it was that. Maybe they was like, I lost to the Giants, I have to get out of here. And Zadarius Smith was like, I'm retiring for that.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the thing we've talked about. Was it last week or the week before? I think it was last week. With the Lions, just don't lose these kinds of like those kinds of games. They don't.
Yeah.
They don't just get randomly blown out by the New York Giants. And if that happens later in the year, you can put this in old
I
takes
was gonna say
exposed or
we
whatever.
do play the Giants, so
Yeah, tempting fate.
um aside from that, the Buffalo Bills lost again. They lost to the
Yep.
Atlanta Falcons on Monday night there, that Monday night doubleheader. I don't know what the NFL's insistence with doing these Monday night doubleheaders after week one is, but they're here, I
I
guess.
think it was part of the media deal. I think they
Oh, maybe
like
it was.
ESPN bid for several doubleheaders over the course of the year.
All right, fair enough. Um, the Broncos and Jets played a football game, allegedly. I don't know if we can call what the Jets did playing. They had negative 10 net passing yards against the Broncos. And Aaron Glenn is speed running his way towards public humiliation out of New York at this rate. I don't even know what else to say aside from what we've already talked about with these guys. They stink.
Well, not just Aaron Glenn, but Tanner Engstrand. I saw some posts with his face in crosshairs, so it doesn't seem to be going too well for him. And speaking of old takes exposed, there are some tweets about him from week one that certain people may want to dig up or delete if they were the people that sent them.
Week one overreactions, people. They never cease to amaze. The Rams beat the Ravens in another super ugly game that even the little bits of it that I saw on Red Zone, I was like, I hate every part of this. There was just so much bad that happened in that game. But Puka Nacua, he's been playing like the best receiver in football this year. He left the game with an injury. Seems like he'll be down a few weeks. The Chargers are the weirdest sort of good team ever. They sneak by the Dolphins after starting so good. They've been so mediocre since then. I know they're banged up. I don't know what's going on with them, but old Jimmy Harbaugh's winning games.
Well, the offensive line is what's going on. If you saw any of that game, including the triumphant play that won them the game with the Herbert escapes the sack to the throw to McConkey, who then shakes the tackler and then runs like 25 yards after that. Because they lost Joe Alt, I believe, recently or like a few weeks ago,
And they
and
already had Rashawn
had
Slater down.
right. watching just the clips of it on Red Zone, including that play, it's just like there's pressure on Herbert like every single drop back and coming from all over. It's definitely inhibited their ability to have a functional offense. Obviously, they scored only 10 points the previous week against Washington, but I think the bigger concern is the defensive issues. They've given up 27 2 weeks in a row, including to the Dolphins this week. Not the greatest thing if they get bombed by Indianapolis, which could happen this upcoming week because the Colts offense is the
Randomly amazing.
the greatest show on turf 2020's edition. That's an area of concern, I would say. But the Chargers, they still look like they'll probably be a playoff team, but maybe not the team that we thought they were going to be earlier in the year.
This is becoming kind of a funny storyline, but in the last 2 weeks, Rico Dowdle has like 380 rushing yards. He had a nice little revenge game against the Dallas Cowboys. The Panthers able to get a win there. Ted McMillan, couple of touchdowns, his first of his career. The Panthers are one of and the Cowboys. Actually, both these teams are the same. They are so bipolar on a week-to-week basis. They can't decide whether they're good or bad, but they're gonna win a decent chunk of games just from sheer parity in the NFL.
Speaking of the other parody, do you see who they are playing this week?
The Panthers or the Cowboys?
Panthers.
Oh no, who are they playing this week?
The New
Oh
York
boy.
Jets.
Oh boy. Hey, so with Rico Dowdle 380 yards in the last 2 weeks, do we think that Aaron Glenn is going to relive Christmas Eve 2022?
It's possible. I the thing with the Panthers, honestly, if you go back to that week they got blown out by the Patriots, who would have imagined that they would then bounce back, win those 2 games in a row, and get to 500 at the 6 game mark? Impressive work by them to at least get up off the mat and
Yeah,
kind of stabilize their season.
and the Panthers are so weird because I look at them and I'm like, I don't think they really have many stars or like elite level talent, but they have a solid enough roster. So it kind of just depends whether or not Bryce Young has a good game or not, and they'll win or lose, or at least be competitive or not competitive. Good for them. They've won 3 games. They're on track to have a much improved season. Speaking of the Patriots, Drake May is a dude. That guy is legit.
You hate to see it.
The Patriots are back. Dare people say the 4-2 Patriots are first in the AFC East right now after they beat the Bills last week and the Bills lost again this week. The Patriots are gonna make the playoffs, and people are gonna be miserable if they become good again.
Oh, not my problem. They're in the AFC. Not the end of
The
the world.
yeah, the Packers win not the prettiest game against the Bengals, but as Lions fans, we also just watched the Lions win not the prettiest game against the Bengals, so we can't talk too much smack there. It would have been funny
Although,
though.
although, like the Bengals, that was actually like a competitive game for like some of the second half. I mean,
Yeah.
the Bengals got it to a one-score game, and then the Packers offense was able to hang on to it, which is a little different than going up 28-3 and then kind of letting Cincinnati claw back in.
Yeah, yeah.
These last few weeks for the Packers, definitely, they just have not looked super sharp to me. Um, they've
They
got
are
two
first in the
interesting,
NFC North though.
yeah, but they got 2 interesting games the next 2 weeks. They got at Arizona this upcoming week. I don't really think too highly of the Cardinals, but at Arizona has always been a weird place to play, and then at Pittsburgh on Sunday night. So hopefully one of those two teams can deliver an upset of the Packers.
Aaron Rodgers, this is your redemption arc. We'll have to preview that game during the Lions bye week there. Aside from that, what else we got? There was the Buccaneers, who the Lions will play this week, beat an injured 49ers team, and now the Buccaneers themselves, we talked about the Lions secondary issues. The Bucs don't have wide receivers left.
Yeah, and didn't stop Baker in that game. 17 of 23, 256, 2 touchdowns, plus a 15-yard scramble that everyone went crazy about online. The Bucs are 5-1. They are the only 5-1 team in the NFC. They're the only team, I guess, with a loss, with only one loss and 0 ties. A
The
weird way you have to.
only So the top of the NFL right now, who could have seen this coming? Number one in the league by because of point differential, strength of schedule, whatever. The Indianapolis Colts at 5-1. Number two, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at 5-1. Number three, the Pittsburgh Steelers at 4-1. just like we all predicted.
What's going on? This is a weird, weird year. And the Bills look vulnerable. The Ravens are
Dead. The one in
irrelevant.
five Ravens. Like,
Maybe they'll do something when Lamar comes back, but who knows? Texans are sub 500. Chiefs are 500. I mean, when was like the last time that at week 6 of a season, or now I guess week 7, going into week 7, none of the previous division winners of the prior season in a conference were leading their divisions in the next season at week 7. It can't be that often.
nope. It's been a truly bizarre season. Like the AFC especially has been a mess so far. Like it just makes no sense. The if you had told me that through 6 weeks the Colts and Jaguars would both be above 500 and the Texans would be below, I don't know if I'd believe you. Uh,
Strange,
should
strange year.
should also mention last week before we move on to a preview, the Tennessee Titans are the first to fire a head coach. Bryce Callahan, I think was his name. He's
Brian
gone.
Callahan.
Brian Callahan is out the door. Titans, bad organizations, stay bad.
Yep, and with Vrabel doing what he is in New England, pretty rough for Titans fans at the moment. I don't know what it is about South Division teams that just make them perpetually kind of a joke. Speaking of South Division, though, Atlanta gets that big win over Buffalo last night. But more interesting, what did you think of the Bears Commanders game? 25-24, Moody's revenge.
First of all,
He's
I have a
back.
bunch of I have a bunch of friends that are Niners fans, and they when they saw that he was starting the game for the Bears, they were like, "Okay, the Bears are trying to lose." And then I was jabbing them like, "Hey, the Bears are setting up for a Jake Moody walk-off field goal. What could go wrong, right, guys?" And they were not impressed with how that game ended, and I was not impressed with the way the Commanders ended that game with just an inexcusable fumble at the end. And then, I mean, maybe this is encouraging. The Commanders still don't know how to defend outside zone as DeAndre Swift is finding himself a nice little haul. Ben Johnson knows how to use him, and I'll give him credit for that. The Bears have a lot of offensive linemen that are basically designed to run outside zone, and that's all they've been running with DeAndre Swift, and it is working. So I'll give Ben Johnson credit for that. Caleb Williams is doing a much better job at avoiding sacks. Still, he's on pace for over 4,000 yards. I don't know if he'll get there because it is Chicago after all. I don't know. I kind of came out of that game being like, how did the Commanders blow that?
I really wasn't too. I don't know. I didn't come away from this game too impressed with Commanders. Like they did okay. They were leading this game late. Probably should have won it, but it just I don't know. I'm not super high on the Bears. I'm not. I just don't. Coming away from this game, I'm not scared of that game against Washington on the road in November. Like obviously, the Lions could lose it. Any team can beat any team. It's a road game. Blah blah blah. But it doesn't look like a marquee road game in the way that we
Eagles
viewed
does.
KC. Yeah, Eagles or KC or the Packers to start the season. That looks like a game the Lions should go in feeling like they should win, but it will depend on health and execution, all that kind of stuff. It may come down to weather too, because that game
Yeah.
last night it was misting, and that was kind of why the ball was slippery.
We do know the Lions are going to be so motivated for that game, though, after the
Oh,
way
oh
last
yeah.
year ended. And if it is poor weather and the Lion and both teams have to run the ball 45 times, I'm taking the Lions to just bully them up front and rely on that offensive line. So we'll see how that goes, but that's a few weeks away still. Um, Worth noting, every NFC North team is currently above 500 once again, as we are still the best division in football, I guess. And aside from that, let's I guess quickly preview Bucs Lions here. So as we mentioned, Bucs very beat up a wide receiver. Emeka Egbuka is the most recent victim with a hamstring injury. Don't know the severity, but it sounds like he's going to miss a little bit of time. Chris Godwin is out. Jalen McMillan is out. And Mike Evans has been out, but he might be back for this one. We'll see. The real problem, though, that the Lions are going to have to deal with is Patrick Mahomes just had a great performance against them, and Baker Mayfield is also among the MVP candidates early in this season. He has been playing outstanding.
Yeah, speaking of down bad franchises like the Titans, what do Browns fans do every Sunday? Like how
Cry.
How do you exist at this point? I don't even know what to say about that with the way Baker's playing. 12 touchdowns, one interception, 7.9 yards per attempt, 66% completion, plus 158 yards on the ground on 22 carries. Hard to do a lot better than that. He has been awesome so far this season, but thankfully, some of the injuries here may make it a little bit easier. Although Tez Johnson had a touchdown last week, he was a guy
Great grab.
kind of liked it. Oregon. Sterling Shepard, is he healthy?
Yep.
Yep. So if Evans comes back between Shepard, Evans, and Tez Johnson, you have enough there to be okay. We'll see what happens with Evans, though, obviously. What I do like about this matchup, though, is the Lions should be able to get some pressure. It's going to be a test of Baker's escapability. The Lions have had issues wrapping up the quarterback, actually turning pressures into sacks this season. But I think they should get some pressure because you look at this offensive line. Tristan Wirfs is a dude, but beyond that, this isn't a line that scares me really. They've got some issues at tackle, some issues in the interior, and that was the case last year when the Lions played them. The Lions they were more injured on the line at that point because Wirfs didn't play in that game, did he?
No.
That was
That
they had
was
like a
the whole
backup.
thing is like because we were still at that point of the season. It was Hutchinson had 4.5 sacks, and everyone's like, well, he was playing a backup tackle. He
Right,
should have had that.
right.
He should be having 7 sacks a game against backup tackles. Like people were just finding every excuse to be like discrediting what Hutch did.
Maybe 7 sacks if you're blocked by a tight end all game because
Yeah.
we've seen what that looks like. But no, they should be able. Like they, this was a team that hasn't run the ball particularly well over the past few seasons. I remember that was a big storyline going into the game in the playoffs a couple of years ago. They have talented running backs, but again, you look at this Bucky
Bucky
Irving.
Irving's out for this game, probably.
Yeah, well, and he was at 3.3 yards per carry for the season.
Yeah.
Rashad White 4.0, decent players, but they just don't have the horses up front. So you're kind of just relying on Baker Magic and wide receivers, which can play a role. But I feel like there should be opportunities for the Lions to get some sacks and get enough stops to then let your offense cook. And I think for the Lions, it's going to be rushing the ball in this game. Just looking at the personnel, the Bucs have a great secondary with Jamel Dean, and it seems like Winfield has bounced back, having a good season. That safety tandem is real nice, but they're not super strong in the front seven. Vita Vea is his own thing, but I think there should be opportunities for the Lions to do their thing in terms of running the ball, using play action pass, and put some points on these guys. Like last year, the issue was not driving the ball. Like they were able to move
Ooh.
up and down the field, they just couldn't finish in the red zone. And I think that because they were a loss last season, this will be a game that the Lions are going to be ready for.
Yeah, and the Lions very rarely like lose back-to-back games in the Dan Campbell
Yep.
era, like especially in recent years. So expect to bounce back. I will say with Vita Vea, please don't run up the middle too much. Like obviously if you're like the Lions love running duo with Montgomery and Gibbs, like they'll do that still. This needs to be a game where you run more outside zone with Gibbs. Get him in space. I think it's time. This is you have the matchup to do it, and you have the motivation to get outside away from some of these guys up in the middle. Should also mention Kalijah Cansey's out for this game for the Bucs as well. Like they are just as beat up as the Lions all over the field. So I also want to flag Baker Mayfield for as good as he's been. 4 fumbles so far this year. Aiden Hutchinson is on this crazy streak of forcing fumbles, so maybe we get another one this week. But if not him, like so, you should be able, if you get hands on Baker, swipe at the football. Maybe there's a chance for a turnover there. Especially if the safeties are out and we're relying on a hodgepodge bunch of guys there. Any kind of turnover would be spectacular for this team to get. But you have to be able to run the ball, control the clock, keep Baker off the field because he's been playing way too well despite the limitations at receiver. So hopefully the Lions bounce back. Also, as an aside, I really hope they wear the black jerseys this Monday because this seems like a prime opportunity to do so. Get the alternates out on Monday night, similar to what they did against Seattle last year. And yeah, anything else before we wrap?
Not particularly. Like I think that I saw Lions favored by maybe 5.5 in this game. I think that was the number
Seems
I saw earlier
seems
today.
aggressive, but
I I don't like. Yeah, maybe it's a touch high, but I do feel like this is a game the Lions are the favored team for in the sense that they're at home. Both teams have injuries, but the Lions bounce back well in the Campbell era. I feel okay about this. And
It's kind of the reverse of what we just went through with the Chiefs, right? Where the Lions are coming off a win, they have the better record, but the Chiefs were going back home, coming off a loss, looking to bounce back. Now it's the exact opposite.
right, and I think that the Lions can win this game. I don't want to say should, like this isn't a layup, but I think that
No,
you're looking at this feeling pretty decent. And if you can nail that win down, then you power into the bye at 5-2. Maybe you're first in the North when you come back. Maybe you're not. Depends on if the Steelers or whoever beat the Packers. But you'll feel good about it because this was a challenging first 7 games. Like the Ravens now are a joke. When the Ravens had Lamar, they were a better team, and that was a solid win for the Lions. They had to go at Green Bay. They had to go at Kansas City. They they've navigated some tougher games, and I think if you're there at 5-2, it puts everything in front of you and allows you to get to work in the second half and hopefully be healthier. You'll have McNeil back at that point. Just got to gut through this game and get it in the win column, and you'll feel pretty good.
exactly. So that is going to be it for this show. Thank you guys so much for watching or listening. If you're on YouTube, make sure to hit like and subscribe. Make sure to leave us a follow or give us a follow and leave us a review. You can find the show on Twitter at Payne and Drain, me at ZachPayne41, Alex at Alex_Drain, and we will see you guys next time. Until then, cheers.